Howdy, and welcome to LeeReads, where I talk about the books I've been reading and enjoying lately. Happy New Year! This is my December reading wrap-up, and while I had a couple DNFs this month that I'm not really going to talk about, I also had a really good time. It's going to be a little bit unusual, and you'll see what I mean when we get there. But, launching right into it, the fourth book in the Saint of Steel series by T. Kingfisher, which is the longer series in her World of the White Rat, came out at the beginning of December, so you better believe that I read it right away. I mentioned it's book 4. There are 7 paladins left who belongs to the Saint of Steel. The premise was that this god died, and when that happened, his paladins kind of went mad with the trauma of that death, and these are the 7 that remain. Since then, they have been helping out where they can with the Temple of the White Rat. That's another god in this medieval fantasy world. T. Kingfisher, it's delightful, it's humorous, it's dark in places, and there's romance, and the entire world of the White Rat is one of the favorite literary things I've discovered since 2022. Before it came out, it's following one of the paladins we haven't heard about so much, Shane, and also a character from the first book. Now, I love this series so much that when I saw that there was a beautiful special edition of Paladin's Grace, which is the first book in the series, I picked it up. One day, I would love to have the entire series in a form as beautiful as this. I don't even think I mentioned that the fourth book's name is Paladin's Faith, and the plot of this one is a little bit more political. The female main character is a spy, but the way that a lot of the different threads that have been built throughout the series start intertwining and building up. It's book 4 out of a planned 7, so we're really starting to learn things, and it's like the overarching story is really good. So I really liked this installment in the series, and I'm excited for the direction that the last 3 books seem like they might be going. But that's all I can really say about it. If you've read The Saint of Steel, please talk to me more about it in the comments. I love these books. I took a trip to Barnes & Noble just to cheer myself up after having one of my surgery follow-up appointments, which I'm doing quite well. I do not feel normal, but I feel better. I feel better than I did before the surgery, which is great, aside from the fact that I'm still healing. But I picked up Enchanted Hill. It was on the mystery thriller table. It's a somewhat historical book about these spies. Not in my normal wheelhouse, but I did enjoy this one. There's an aspiring private investigator named Cora. She grew up on Pelican Island, which was an island that just had this prison on it for horrible felons. Her father was one of the guards there, and she befriended one of the prisoners who was very stout in his innocence, and gave him enough information just in conversation as they got to know one another that prisoner was able to escape, the only prisoner who's ever escaped, but they thought that he drowned. Back to the current day, which is in the 1920s, so Prohibition, she is spying on this very wealthy man at his very fancy house at Enchanted Hill, trying to get evidence for her employer. Meanwhile, that person who escaped from the island shows up as also not what he appears, trying to get information for his own ends. And I liked how the story wound together. I really enjoyed both Cora and Jack's perspective. Also, it was kind of topsy-turvy in that you have all this past history, so the story would go back and visit kind of how they got to know each other on Pelican Island, and of course those feelings of betrayal, and you find out what really happened. So they're grappling with that as they are realizing that they may be at cross purposes in the present day and what their goals are. So this one was a fun read, not my normal thing, but I would be interested in reading more books like this one. Then I had an e-arc for this book, but it actually came out last month, and I had already ordered myself a physical copy of Shield Maiden, which is a Norse-inspired fantasy. It's a Beowulf retelling, actually. And to tell the truth, I think the fact that it was trying hard to be a retelling is what made me not enjoy it as much. And there was this secondary plot with the mythology and the magic that one of the characters has in here. And I wish that subplot had just been left out and it had focused instead on Frida and the other characters in the present day. And I wish that it had been more of its own thing rather than a retelling, because breaking away to step back and amp up the mythic magical side of it, I thought detracted from the main plot that I was very interested in. This is political. It kind of has an epic feel because of that retelling quality, but it's very centered on a certain village where all of these events are taking place. But unfortunately for me, I didn't love it as much as I was really hoping that I would love this book. That said, I enjoyed it and I recommend it. I'm going to keep this on my bookshelf, and I would like to see more books like this, but being their own stories and not necessarily trying so hard to be a retelling. And then the last collection of books that I read are historical romances. I mentioned them at the end of my last reading wrap-up. They are by Lisa Kleypas, and there's 2 series here, one which is a generation or so before the other, and some of the books cross-interact. You should read one series before the other or else it spoils things. Okay, all of these books, between these 2 series, I have all of the books in the series, but 2, which I found at the half-price bookstore. And don't judge them by their covers. I don't love the covers. All of these books, between November and December, I have read all of them, but 2 of them. I'm on the second to the last one out of all of them that I have. They are on Hoopla, the audiobooks are, so I've been going back and forth between audio and these physical copies, and so I've been able to read them quite fast. They are, I guess, like Regency type romances. They're set in the 1800s in England, like the 1840s is the Wallflowers series, and the 1880s is the Ravenel series. It's really the characters for me that have kept me extremely engaged in this series. The first series is shorter. It's a book of 4. It's called The Wallflowers, and it's about these women who are the wallflowers in the social season. They meet sitting against the wall in one of the balls of the season. They are in the ballroom for different reasons. They have different backgrounds, different motivations. They decide, rather than competing against one another for the eligible bachelors, they are going to help each other out, starting with the oldest and working to the youngest, and they become great friends. And their stories intertwine, and with each one, not only did I grow attached to that particular one of the Wallflowers, but I became very invested in the others. And it's just a wonderful series about female friendships. And I also really liked the love interests in the story too. They're all dealing with deeper level things, and each kind of scenario is quite different. They're all different types of people. They behave differently. I just wish that rather than these covers, which is the Wallflower book 1, I really prefer more like, the less kind of, they're Avon romance books. So that's what the covers look like. And then the second series is the Ravenel series. The Ravenel is a family, and it starts out when this rake inherits an earldom and decides, instead of just selling it all, decides to really focus on rebuilding the lands, making the lands profitable. And then instead of just dismissing his cousins who live there, he really cares for them, takes them under his wing. It follows first his story and then the different sisters who he cares for, and like his brother and other characters. Again, a case of the sisters are so endearing. These characters, I've gotten really frustrated by some of them, but also still very invested in their stories. And some of the side characters that you meet in one novel become a focus character in the next. I love trying to guess who that's going to be and then following their stories too. So I've totally gotten sucked into the world that Lisa Kleypas has written, and when I finish this series, I guess I'm gonna have to go back and read more, probably chronologically. Really enjoying them, and just great kind of comfort reads that I think even though I found these at the Half Price Bookstore, I think I'm probably going to keep them, and I'll probably revisit them from time to time. I've just really liked them. And those are the books that I read this month in December. With the last book that I finished, that was my 95th book of the year, so I might finish my current read before the end of the month. We will find out. I have a day or two left. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that I've inspired you to try some of these books if they sound interesting to you. And also, I hope that you are having, so far, a great start to 2024. Thanks, and as always, don't forget to support your local library.